Ray was a soldier on duty in Kenya when he got a word that a group of armed men had taken over a building. Apparently, it was also a delicate hostage situation. Ray knew it was going to be dangerous, but he didn't let that stop him from getting the job done. He stood by the door while his squad mates took cover behind him. Then suddenly, chaos broke loose. The bad guys inside started shooting at them through the door. The officer in charge gave Ray an order: hold off on the breach. But instead of following orders like a good little soldier, Ray did something incredible. He threw a flashbang into their hideout, toggled his aimbot, and rushed inside. He shot every last one of those bad guys with pinpoint precision before making his way up to find the hostage. Once there, the bad guy demanded a helicopter. Helicopter, helicopter. Ray obliged, but if he was going to call one in, he needed a phone. So the guy helpfully pointed one out with the shotgun. With the hostage now safe for just a moment, Ray springs into action, whipping out his Glock and taking care of business. With the hostage secured, Ray looks down and finds he's wounded. Darn, and he almost got the no damage taken achievement too. When Ray came home from his mission, he was ready to see his wife. He told his fellow soldiers that that right there was what they were fighting for. Yes, his wife specifically, and he was ready to embrace her. His wife was a beauty, and they immediately celebrated his return with a scenic vacation. The next morning, Ray woke up alone and confused. Relatable. He felt around in the bed until he found a note that said, "I'm going out for breakfast." Ray washed up in the bathroom, then heard something coming from outside. Armed men broke into his room and spotted Ray's reflection through the mirror. They rushed in, but he fooled them with the old bathroom mirror bamboozle bonanza. They all proceed to fight in an awfully cut, chaotic sequence. To cap it off, this guy punches Ray in the arm. It's not very effective. Then he stumbles out of his room in search of his wife, Gina. He bumps into an innocent-looking guy, but then gets all woozy and collapses. The now not-so-innocent guy looms over Ray, holding a needle. When Ray awoke, he had no idea where he was. He just knew that his hands were tied behind his back, and the room he was in was not friendly for vegans. Then, a man appeared at the back of the room. The same man. He dons a dripped-out outfit before dancing towards him. Smooth. The man asked him who told him about the hostages in his previous mission. But Ray stays silent. So, to up the stakes a little, the man brings out today's guest, Ray's wife. Now, Ray is a bit more talkative, but still has nothing substantial to say. He claims he doesn't know and just goes where his supporters tell him to. The man ends up believing Ray. Relief wash overs his face, but then, never mind. Rip in peace. Ray is livid, but then he too goes to sleep, forever, until he wakes up again in a futuristic lab. Ray's eyes fluttered open, and he was overwhelmed with the unnecessary but cool lighting scheme of the room. He spots a woman, and her chest is more eye-catching than the usual variety. Later, Ray fully comes to and is visited by Dr. Emil Harding, and his assistant is the woman he already met, Katie. The doctor breaks the news. Ray died, but they brought him back to suffer more in the land of the living. He doesn't believe it for a second, but when asked what his name is, he can't even remember. Dr. Emil is giving Ray a tour of the facility. Here, they create robotic tech for the military like bionic limbs and exoskeletons. He gestures to a room full of machines that look like they belong in a laboratory from a sci-fi movie. Oh wait, Dr. Harding states that Ray is their greatest creation yet. Then he cuts Ray's hand with a scalpel, but only to demonstrate the remarkable capabilities of the nanites inside him. Not gonna lie, he had us in the first half. Ray looks down at his hand in awe. The nanites move around like insects, working swiftly to repair his skin. Not so much as a scar is left behind. However, his emotional damage is still hurting. Dr. Harding implores him to forget the past and consider the possibilities of the future. In his case, he lost his arm to cancer and with it, his career in tennis. So he invented robo-arms instead, which is way cooler. Right after, Dr. Harding takes Ray to meet some other enhanced soldiers who are just as weird as he is. One of them has bionic eyes on his chest, and the other has bionic legs that help him run really fast. And of course there's Katie, who can breathe through a hole in her chest. Weird flex, but okay. Instead of feeling inspired by all this, Ray comments that they're all a bunch of wounded soldiers. Damaged goods. He goes up to his room to sleep and has nightmares about his wife. The memories are slowly coming back. Ray wakes up and decides to channel his frustration into something productive. He goes to the gym to blow off some steam, but instead of punching a bag, he punches through it. He's pretty proud of this new ability, but then realizes that he can't really use it effectively in a boxing match because he'd kill the other guy. So instead, he tries out his new power on a concrete column, using it as a punching bag. The concrete begins cracking under the force of his blows, so Ray busts out some more combos. That doesn't look very safe. Ray wraps things up with a superset of curls. You know what they say, curls for the girls. Right on cue, Katie shows up and starts swimming next to him. She puts on an underwater karate performance for him, which looks pretty cool but doesn't seem very practical in combat situations. Afterwards, they relax with some drinks. But then a low pulsing sound fills the room. Katie grimly stares at a device on the wall, and then suddenly, Ray starts getting vivid flashbacks of his wife. He begins speaking the same words he did when he lost her. Eventually, he snaps out of it, but now he knows what he needs to do. He was going to escape from the facility and go on a personal revenge mission against Martin Axe, the guy who clapped his wife. But Dr. Harding was having none of it. "Your body belongs to me," he told Ray through his built-in brain Bluetooth. Interesting choice of words. Ray says no, I do what I want. And with that, he used his cybernetic abilities to hack Martin's location, and then he stole a plane, and then he downloaded the flight manual to his brain. And finally, he set this truck on a collision course for Martin. For no reason other than it looks cool, the truck was filled with flour. Ray emerges and fires at Martin's car. The bulletproof glass is unfazed, but Ray is not. He gets popped and collapses to the ground, but not before placing a thermite canister in the car. It melts into the engine, disabling it. Ray recovers with his nanobot powers and bestows a beatdown on Martin's henchman. He bends this guy's arms backwards, and even Martin is like, "Whoa, that wasn't called for." Meanwhile, Martin calls his buddy, and it seems like they were expecting this attack. As prepared as they were, they still underestimated the power of family. Then, we see some cool slow-mo fight sequences where everyone is fighting and shooting, and they're all covered in flour. Very cool. With those guys taken care of, Ray turns his attention back to Martin. He takes the pin off this guy's grenade and presses his body against the window. Kaboom! With the window now open, Ray is greeted with a shotgun blast to the face, which he tanks because he's built different. Martin cowers in fear as he pleads with Ray. "I can help you. This is a mistake," he says, but Ray can hardly hear him. Rage takes over as he puts Martin down. Later, Ray returns from his revenge mission and is picked up by his fellow soldiers. He tells Katie he did what he had to do and he's done. Strangely, Katie says she's done too. Puzzled, Ray asks with what. Then Dalton blows up Ray's car and they all walk away from the explosion without looking back, because it's cooler that way. We cut to the lab where Ray tries to get up but has his motor functions disabled. Uh-oh. Dalton proceeds with an expositional dump about the true nature of this arrangement. You see, he hates having to be Ray's babysitter, but this is always his favorite part. He leans into Ray's ear and tells him that Gina is alive. Ray can't respond, but his eyes speak volumes. Dalton explains that Ray's memories are fake and they exploit his revenge to take out their targets. He's basically a deadly, wind-up toy soldier. As his memory is wiped, we pan over to Dr. Harding. He confronts Katie for going off script when she said, "I'm done too." We learn that if she is to leave this facility, her breathing gets turned off. She's reminded that this is the choice she made, but she just wishes that Ray had a choice too. Katie is dismissed, and we learn that the targets Ray is being sent after are actually ex-employees. Talk about workplace misconduct. You see, Dr. Harding wants to make sure he's the only one who knows how to make nanites before they go to market with the product. Stonks. Ray proceeds with his simulations. Everything is the same, aside from a few minor tweaks. Oh, and the new target is Nick Barris. Ray runs through the same events as before, and once again, he escapes to take out his target. Dr. Harding and the others play along, acting out their lines, but Dalton over here is fed up with the repetition. I think he represents the audience. Speeding things up, Ray heads to Nick's fortified compound and plays dead. Then they just let him in. Inside, Nick speaks with his tech guy, Wiggins, who has a device that will save the day. Though, Nick's not a great boss. In fact, he kidnapped Wiggins and has been forcing him to work for free. Kinda racist. As such, Wiggins is sparse on details on how to use the device, which we soon learn is an EMP. Ray closes in, but the bullets are no match for his god mode. Meanwhile, Nick is waiting for the EMP to charge up, but he runs out of time. Ray is here. He makes Nick die by killing him. Dr. Harding is relieved. The EMP didn't go off and his final obstacle has been dealt with. Or has it? The EMP goes boom and the lights go out for a mile. Sometime later, and Wiggins zaps Ray back to life. Talk about shocking. I'm sorry. As Wiggins explains that he's on his side, Ray remembers all the times that his wife got clapped by different guys. Now understanding that Dr. Harding is his true target, Ray gives Wiggins a sample of nanites so he can reverse engineer them. Then he gets in a vintage whip that can't be tracked. First order of business, track down his wife, which he does. They share a warm greeting, but Ray's reality is no more. Gina moved on and has her own family now. In fact, she hasn't seen or heard from him in 5 years. The revelation hits Ray hard, so he disappears. Confused, Ray leaves and starts driving through the city, when all of a sudden, an armored truck rams into him. So much for no tracking. The super soldier friends have turned to foes and hunt him down. Well, actually, Dalton kinda always was a jerk. Daddy Longlegs Dalton takes off with great speed while Guy uses some drones to get a bird's eye view. Once Dalton catches up, he blasts Ray with some anti-nanite bullets. They turn Ray's beefy python arm into a little noodle. In retaliation, he grabs a gun, uses a police car as cover, and starts blasting away. His effort is commendable, but his flank was compromised. He gets stabbed in the back, both literally and metaphorically. But it wasn't a knife. It's a Wi-Fi dongle. Dr. Harding is able to re-establish connection and shut Ray down. Back at the lab, Katie is tasked with taking down Wiggins, but she protests. So the good doctor puts her in her place by shutting off her breathing. Left with no other option, Katie submits. She makes it over to Wiggins' hideout and knocks him out with sleeping smoke. Then, she proves that equality is real by beating up these grown men. Back in the lab, Ray chats with Dr. Harding in a virtual construct. Then, we get a solid 30-second flex of this movie's VFX budget. Very cool. Now that all of Harding's targets are gone, Ray will have his nanites extracted and sold off. Meanwhile, Katie returns from her mission and Dalton rubs it in that they caught Ray. Yeah, not on her watch. She heads over to Harding and tells him she failed to capture Wiggins. The solution? Harding's gonna reboot Ray for one last revenge mission. However, this buys Katie just enough time to throw a wrench in those plans. She invades Ray's false memories, reveals the truth, and signals Wiggins to take over. That's right, she kept him all to herself. He engages in a breathtaking battle with the other IT guy, ultimately coming out on top. Now free, Ray heads for Harding, but Dalton and Tibbs have something to say about that. They gear up with their new drip and proceed with an anxiety-inducing fight on an elevator. They eventually get the better of Ray and he falls off the building. Just kidding, he hitches a ride. Some more chaos unfolds, and this time Ray's gonna fall for real, along with Tibbs. Dalton slides down with his bionicle arms and compromises the cables. Tibbs pleads with him to stop, but all he cares about is taking Ray down. Sadly, Tibbs falls, due to gravity. Then, Ray defies gravity and launches himself towards Dalton, sending them both plummeting down. During freefall, Ray powers up by overclocking his nanites. He loses his cool tan and gets some RGB lighting in his chest instead. Then, he turbo punches Dalton. Rip in peace. Ray's vitals are surging through the roof, so Wiggins urges him to retreat to safety, but he has unfinished business. He spots Harding getting into his car and emerges from the smoke and rubble. Harding threatens him, reminding Ray that he's the only one that knows how to run the nanites and he won't be able to live without him. Ray is unwavering in his march, so Harding shoots a grenade at him. The explosion scatters the nanites. Ray's battery runs low as Harding readies the next shot. He fires, but this time Ray's cloud of nanites disassemble the round before it can reach him. However, he's all out of juice. Harding claims victory, but not so fast. Ray's holding the explosive. He drops it, and it lands perfectly. Imagine if it didn't. Okay, he definitely doesn't survive this. On the contrary, days later, Ray wakes up next to Wiggins, completely healed and memory intact. It turns out they managed to bring him back to life for a second time using the nanites, and even added in some bonus stamina points this time. Having completed the main quest and reaching max level, Ray and his squad drive off into the sunset, eager to start playing some of the side missions.